Good morning, everyone. Not sure how many people are watching, but good morning anyway. So today I'd like to, this morning I should say, I'd like to talk about work holding at the workbench and what I do with my furniture making and some of the bench accessories I've developed over the years to be able to do this successfully. Now, a little bit about my background for people who aren't familiar with myself or my work. I'm the owner of woodskills.com. And Pearl Design. Pearl Design is more of the furniture component of what I do. So I create studio furniture, contemporary based studio furniture. I used to be labeled as a Krenov. My work was very synonymous with James Krenov's style of work, and I do owe a lot of my designs to James Krenov's work, and I followed in his footsteps, studied from some of the people that have studied with him, and my website Pearl Design has a full complement of work, primarily cabinets on stand that demonstrate the aesthetic, the mid-century aesthetic, that Scandinavian aesthetic that James Krenov is very well known for. So I like that style, and I've embraced it over the years, and so I've become quite adept at creating cabinets on stand. You can see my work there. And Wood Skills is the education component. So Wood Skills, I've been writing a few books over the years. I keep forgetting the camera's up there, not there. Okay. I've been writing a few books over the years. And as well, I've been developing some online courses, and I keep adding to the courses, and the courses themselves get updated too. So over time, and as well as the introduction of new courses. The one that comes to mind is the Woodworking Design to Making course I've just completed developing a few weeks ago. It's 5 hours in length, and it covers quite a bit. It covers from the design, working with creating designs, right through to creating furniture. And I basically, it's a tell-all. I share almost everything I know about furniture making in a condensed form. So it's well worth the investment of $50, and you get the book included. So there's an accompanying book called Woodworking from Design to Making that's included in the price, and it's a one-time price. So it's really, I made all my courses very affordable because I'm very much a proponent of getting people interested in woodworking. I've been at this for a long time. I usually say 2 decades, but maybe it's close to 3 now. And so I've seen my share of how the industry is going, and I see the trend towards this. When I began, the only technology was table saws and bandsaws, very primitive technology in the smaller shops. But now you see more and more CNC and computer-aided design, which I'm a supporter of. I use computer-aided design myself, but I'm not really interested in CNC work. I'm a true believer in if you're going to do woodworking as a small 1 or 2 person operation, although CNC facilitates a lot of it, is really designed for production work, and this is not really what this is about. This is all about enjoying the experience, the woodworking experience, and working. Another thing I'd like to mention is that I've progressed over the years. I've migrated from using strictly machines. Although I had some education and background with hand tools, it was quickly put aside, and everything moved on to machine work in the 80s and I'd say the 90s. It was very little. The hand tool world was very small at the time, and hardly anybody ever talked about using hand tools, aside from some articles in magazines and in a college at Redwoods, a couple of schools in the U.S. that promoted hand tools, like the school I mentioned, James Granoff School. But from there on in, I slowly migrated. I had an awakening. I attended another school that was based on the College of the Redwoods curriculum, very much so, and the actual educator at that school had been educated by James Granoff at his school. So I began to embrace hand tools more and more in my work, and I started to appreciate the advantages and of using hand tools, of actually slowing my work down and appreciating wood more, as the characteristics of wood, and being able to select better woods for my work, working in detail, working in a quiet environment, a dust-free environment. So all this, and over the years, so I've slowly begun a further migration into hand tools, and today I will sooner pick up a hand tool before starting a machine. I still have a full complement of machines here that I've had from day one. In my workshop, I have a 2-level workshop, and I have most machines downstairs, mostly dust collectors, which I don't really start up as much, fraction of the time as much as I used to start. I have a bandsaw, which I could not live without. I mean, if there's one power tool, I can't really live without as a bandsaw. But then of course I have a table saw and all that. But what I'm saying is I'm using all this sometimes because I happen to have it, and I've accumulated all this gear over the years. But you know, if you're starting out, you can actually almost accomplish everything using hand tools. You need patience. You have to embrace working a little slower, although over time you do speed the process up, just automatic, because you develop techniques and methodology and the bench accessories that I'll be showing today, some of them. And so it's all good, really. I find that very few people have access to large workshops today. It's becoming the price of homes, just having a large workshop has become more and more expensive, and a lot of regions in the North America don't even have basements. So you might have to do your woodworking in a shared space or in a room within a living environment, and this introduces problems and noise problems, dust problems, and so to alleviate all that, the solution is to embrace hand tools and do a large part of your work using hand tools. And if you can't, just outsource some of it, bring it to a lumber retailer and have them cut it or dimension the wood down to workable pieces, so you could bring them back to your small workshop with a single workbench and some hand tools and continue with your furniture making. So I'll talk about I don't want this to be about myself so much, but let me just check to see if anybody's communicating with me here. I'm just going to send a message out that this live stream was actually supposed to start at 9:30, so it's on 9:30 now, but I'm just gonna get over there for a second. So if anybody's here watching or listening, let me know if the audio is okay. I think it is. I've done a few of these already, the same setup. So what you'll see at the workbench now is a few small boards and one bench accessory. It's most of my bench accessories are plug-in, and here's a good example. This is a planing stop, it's plug-in, and I developed this over a few years ago. What it is it locks into the edge. It locks into the edge of the workbench, and as well there's a dowel, that 3/4 inch dowel that fits into one of your bench dog holes. So this keeps it from rotating, and it's very, very strong, and it's, I think I measured it yesterday, it was 7/16 in depth. You can probably bring it down to 3/8 of an inch safely. Actually, you probably go down to 1/4 inch. But I use this quite a bit for boards that are at least this thick, to either hand plane the face or the edge. So for smaller pieces, I don't like to use a tail vise. I just butt them against the planing stop and work with that. And so one version, but I'll show you a different version. And so what I've done is because I have this workbench is exactly the same as the second workbench I have. So the spacing and the offsets from the edge are all the same. So I've developed a huge series of these bench accessories over the years that I use as planing stops, and I'll show a bird's mouth accessory soon. But this one is a 1/4 inch, and it works a little differently. It doesn't lock onto the edge, and instead it uses two dowels, 2 3/4 inch dowels, and it fits into two holes. And then the beauty of these bench accessories, service planing stops, is that you can raise or lower them. So if I had a thicker board, this is about, let's say it's about 3/4 inch. I can get this ruler. Yeah, just shy of 3/4 of an inch. So if I had a 1 inch thick board, and this is 1/4 inch, I'd probably want a little more support right here. So I would easily raise this. Now, when you raise it, you can either leave it raised like that because it's just as strong, or you can shim it. And here's an example of shimming. So I'd slide something underneath, and then, or even a longer piece. Here's an example of shimming it. So it's shimmed now, and it's brought up. I brought this up from a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, so I have more support for a board. So there's a tremendous amount of versatility in when you create these. You can use them. You just have to be a little clever and think outside the box sometimes about how to apply these to your own workbench. Now the spacing of this, I cannot provide that because it's unique to this workbench, but all you need to do is determine the offset from the center of the bench dog hole, and either make this model or this model. I've got many more. I wrote an article for well, I won't sound like I'm bragging here, for Fine, it's just if you happen to have that issue, for Fine Woodworking in 2009, and it was republished 3 times, I think, over the years, and it's I think it's in a book called Hand Tool Woodworking. No, that's my book. Wait a minute. There's a very current book that's published by Taunton Press that has that very same article, and in the article, both the Fine Woodworking magazine and that book, and another book on jigs or something, I present all this series of bench accessories, the planing stop, the planing board with the stop, and they're all plug-in. And I also discuss a shooting board and how to make a shooting board. It's an earlier shooting board, yes, but it works fine. I still use the same shooting boards, which I'll talk about in the next at the workbench segment or session. And so that's, if that's of interest to you, I do discuss this system. Now, ever since, again, this was about 11 years ago, 12 years ago, things have changed. I've introduced more accessories. I've developed more accessories over the years, and I tend to use more now. And just to give you an example, I've just begun to publish these. These are small Tamiko guide blocks that I have been working on to meet certain criteria. This is dramatically reduced in size guide blocks, far simpler to make than the conventional guide blocks, and they're used in conjunction with a Tamiko bench hook, and I'll be doing a session on that. So this is, I'm so happy with this that I've actually abandoned using the larger Tamiko guide blocks. Now I just use this system and it works super well. So that's it's as simple as that. This and a 1-inch wide chisel will, and you're off making Tamiko. So these are two Tamiko motifs, patterns that I've created using that system. So I just wanted to prove that it works well. So at one point, if you have the pre-dimensioned bar stock, which you can purchase now, at 1/2 inch wide, 5/32 thick, you can actually work with hand tools afterwards using that system I've developed. No power tools necessary at all. So if you purchase the bar stock, you have at least a couple of chisels, a 1/8 chisel and a 1-inch chisel, and a Dazuki, a Japanese Dazuki, which is ribbed crosscut type saw. It works well. You could, and the bench hook, you're off, and you can make these grids. So it's quite amazing. And the criteria I used to create the system was to be able to do it using strictly hand tools. So I've done it. So what I'll do is I'll show this. I'll be using this bench accessory. I want to make sure it's in the view. So there it is. Okay. So I just changed my camera to show more of my workbench. So I think it goes up to here now. Yeah, there's always a lag in this video, and it drives me crazy because there's at least a few second delay on both Twitch and YouTube. So there, I'm still moving my hand in the video, but okay, so that's as far as I go. What I'll do is my last session I was using a 4.5 smoother, number 4.5 smoother, but the irons needs to be rehoned, so I'm not going to use that today, and I haven't. Actually, the last session was yesterday, and I haven't had an opportunity to sharpen. So I'll use number 4. Number 4, and this is a little fancier Lee Nielsen with a bronze body, but it's a number 4, so I'll pick up my number 4.5 very, very often, and I don't tend to use this one as much. Between the 4 and 4.5, I prefer the 4.5. So when you're hand planing a surface, either a face or an edge, you need to ensure that the grain direction is correct, so the grain is rising, and you're always planing in the direction with the grain rising. If you plane in the opposite direction, you'll introduce tear out very quickly. I'm not sure if everybody's aware of that, but so in this case, this is the direction. I'll just highlight some of the grain here. So the grain, you can see it rising and it's coming up in this direction. So that's the direction we want the hand plane in. And if we flip it around and try to hand plane in this direction, we'll just tear out chunks of wood. So it's very important to determine the grain orientation before. And so, you know, several years ago, I didn't understand this. You know, we were taught hand tools early on, 25, 30 years ago, but very little talk about grain direction and all that. So people would tend to hand plane in the wrong direction and tear out, and they were quickly discouraged from, because of the bad experiences, they were quickly discouraged from using hand tools, and they moved on to machines. But so these are techniques and skills that people that use hand tools should be aware of to make the process more enjoyable. So what I'll do is I like to rub some paraffin wax on a sole. I'm not sure what setting this plane's at, but let me try it out here. Pretty good. So what I've done is I've removed the shaving at full width, and this is what you want to strive for, because if the board's already relatively square, the edge to the faces, and by removing the full width shaving, a uniformly thick full width shaving, you ensure that you maintain that the square, the 90-degree perpendicular edge. So that's it. It's a little fat, that shaving, so just back it off a little. Try it again. It'll lighten up pretty quickly. Yeah, that's perfect. Wow, beautiful. Beautiful. This is probably a good, I talked about in my precision talk a while ago, I talked about counting shavings and determining the thickness of shavings, so you know exactly how much wood to remove without keep remeasuring every time. And so here's a good example of this is a decently thick or thin shaving. I mean, I wouldn't go any thinner. It starts to become serrated, and that's probably as thin as you want. And I also advise to remove the shavings, and the reason for that is because you want to see. Some people think it's just purely for entertainment reasons to remove the shavings and toss them around so they float down. No, it's usually. The reason for it is to clear that opening, so you can watch the next shaving coming out, and you know that it's a full width shaving or not. You're doing you're moving the gliding the plane along correctly, or your iron set correctly. So that's the reason for removing the shavings. And this is perfect. This hand plane really works well, surprisingly. So I'll just test that for square. Yeah, this edge was actually, I did a session yesterday. It was previously squared. So after removing quite a few shavings here, it's still squared because they're uniform in width. So That's a good demonstration of that. So we can actually mark that off as a reference edge. So that's a reference edge. And I'll do the same thing on this edge using that same planing stock. Well, almost made a mistake. Going against the grain. Yeah, that's actually perfect. So it's this perfectly four-squared board. What I'll do now is I'll actually plane one face, just for demonstration purposes. So again, we look at the grain direction, and in this case, in this direction. So although the grain direction is rising when I'm planing this edge, when I'm working the face, it's a little bit it's inverted, and the grain is rising in this direction. So I'll mark that off. So this is the direction I'm going to be planing in. Let me see if I got that right. Okay. That's what I like about the 4.5. 4.5 is wider, and I can probably do a board like this in one pass, but now it's almost as wide as the iron. So you notice the shavings are nice and fluffy. And I can't say enough good things about the surface, the finish of the surface after using a hand plane. It's just amazing. You can never achieve this using sandpaper, never. I've been in both worlds, the whole sanding world, and I try to use very, very little sandpaper today. And but this finish is amazing. So that's good, perfect. So that's an example of using this planing stock. I'd like to give an example of planing in the wrong direction. I wonder if I should. So let's take this side for example. If well, this side's not too bad. So let me see here. So this is the direction I should be planing in. At the top. But I'll reverse it just to give you an idea what happens. I might not even get there. And of course I don't get there. Okay. And the reason for that is this is it's a strange reason, but if you're not familiar with hand plane, this is set at a 50-degree angle. It's a little, I forget the term, but the frog's set at it's a 50-degree frog, so it's set at a 50-degree angle. And it's really, really designed to avoid tear up at that higher pitch. So, so that's not going to work. But I'll get I'll use a small block plane. It's set at the normal 45-degree pitch. No, it just doesn't feel right. It feels rough. This doesn't feel right. So I'm going against the grain here. Although it still works. You know what? It actually does work. It's a good testament to to how the blade, the irons in these planes are honed really well, because they very little tear up. Surprising. Almost no tear up. Now try hand planing in the correct direction. It just feels better, you know. So without even checking, sometimes you can tell. There. I like to rest my planes on a small, thin piece of wood to keep the iron or the blade away from the workbench, because just the way I am. I like my workbenches. I don't like to introduce any damage to the workbench surface. Now this is it's a little different. If I'm mistaken, it's a 9.5. It's a standard angle block plane that I use for long grain, because most people assume that block planes are all low angle, but not necessarily so. They could be standard angle. So it's set at the same angle that a number 4 smoother would be set at, 45 degrees, whereas a low angle block plane is set at 37 degrees. So what this does, it allows me to plane longer edges, so very much like a smoother. And whereas the low angle block plane could do both, but it's really designed to work with end grain. Because of the low angle, it slices the end grain better. So I've been using that on my thicknessing sled, and I talked about that in a much earlier session. I use a thicknessing sled to thickness Tamiko strips or Tamiko bars. So I've resawn these Tamiko bars a little fatter than 5/32, 6/32 or so, and then I hand plane them down in my thicknessing jig, and it works really well. That's a whole subject in itself. So what I'll do next is now this is all planing stuff. I'll talk about a bird's mouth stop. This is a bird's mouth stop, and what this does is it's strictly for planing long edges of boards. If you don't have a face vise, now, I do have a face vise on this workbench, but it's over at the other corner, and rather than move everything around, and I just wanted to demonstrate how this plug-in accessory works. So again, I'll be planing it works really well with thinner boards too, so I'll be planing that same edge again, and I'll show you how it works. So it slides into this opening, and you use two custom-made wedges to keep it in. So I'll just here. So it's locked in, pretty solid. The nice thing about the wedging action is that as you're pushing your hand plane or gliding the hand plane along, it actually keeps the board within the. So that works really well. This is so much fun, so enjoyable. You just want to keep going sometimes. And it's almost the only way to get to attain, to dial in really fine widths, really fine adjustments to widths of boards using a hand plane. I can't even imagine doing this on a table saw, because a table saw will leave a rougher texture, and you probably need a hand plane, or push comes to shove, use sandpaper if you don't have any hand planes afterwards. So that's the final finish. So you've you've reached the final width with the hand plane, and it's already smooth. It's perfect. Yep. So that's how the bird's mouth attachment works. Now, I'll also give a demonstration. Here's a much thinner board, and this is almost impossible to hand plane the edge of this board unless it's clamped in a vise. But think about it, if the board is too long, it just doesn't really work well in a face vise. So and if you don't have a face vise, or if you're working on this side of the workbench, this is where the bird's mouth attachment comes in. So just look at the grain orientation again. This slide it in, lock it in with the wedges. Now, because it's such a thin board, I could use either a smoother or a block plane. I'll use the block plane instead. It's lighter and it's less. And these boards, they're so thin that they flex. So again, you strive for a full width shaving. I like to skew my plane. Oh, that's already set thin. That's more like it. So there's no rushing with this, just here, you can see the shaving coming out, and it's almost full width. Yeah, that shaving is completely full width, so we'll see what we've done as far as damage here. Okay, this one is not square enough, so you need to. So I do 3 passes. On one, I sort of bevel that this side was higher, and then I try to get that full pass in, full width pass in. It's just from experience. We'll see how it works. So, just an example of, I've been doing this for so many years that I can almost tell how many shavings I need to remove on one side or the other, and then get that full width shaving. So that's that. So this side is super smooth compared to this side. It's kind of rough. So I'll do this side now, or this edge. I'll pick up this guy. I'm removing the shavings from the mouth to be able to see the next shaving coming out. That's a complete full width shaving. Okay. Okay, so that's that. So that's this attachment. Again, it's a plug-in attachment. It works in conjunction with the two wedges, and they're cherry wedges. Sometimes people ask what type of wood it is. I use a combination of maple and cherry in my work, my accessories for contrast reasons, and I just happen to have a good supply of maple and cherry. And this is Baltic birch, if I'm not mistaken. It's half inch, just shy of a half inch. It's something in millimeters, I'm not sure, but it's a European version of a half inch, smaller, shorter, thinner. So, what else can I show? I wanted to give a demonstration of my sliding. I'll do that quickly, so I'll remove this. Try to keep these close by because this bird's mouth attachment, it's very easy to make actually. Works in conjunction with the wedges, and so you need the wedges to be able to work it. I developed this, it's this end, sliding tail vise I call it, and I have, it works in conjunction with an end vise. You don't see the other part, you can see it's a movable jaw end vise, but it's a twin screw setup with a chain. And I have, just imagine this, this sliding tail vise is exactly the same as one on the opposite side. So I can use it, because I'm left-handed, I can use it for both right and left-hand operations. I can be on both sides of the workbench. And it works really well because it's not really, it's actually loose, and this is an adjustable bolt that keeps, and it slides within the bolt, and it locks the other part of the sliding tail vise, it locks into the jaw of the, either in your case an end vise, or in my case a twin screw vise. So the concept is that by turning by moving the outside jaw of the tail vise, the end vise, I advance or retract the tail vise, and it's not very high. You can probably go down to 3/8 of an inch, but it's 7/16 high. I measured it yesterday, so just want to confirm that. It's about 7/16, shy of a half inch. So this works really, I've been using this for almost everything. I can't say enough good things about it. And it works in conjunction with a bench dog. So I brought some longer boards today. There's a cherry board. It's kind of gnarly and ugly, but it'll do. And so, for example, if I want to, you see this already has pre-built tear out in it for some reason, because it's just, it's a horrible piece of wood. Let's see if I can fix that. I'm not even sure what direction to plane in, but I'll try. I think we'll start in this direction. We're going to get tear out because the grain reverses at some point here. So using the tail vise, because this is a larger piece, it really doesn't work well against just having it braced against a planing stock. It's very large and wide on the edge and on the face too, so it's just the odds that you're going to keep it against the planing stock are small or slim. So that's where the tail vise comes in. So let me see here. Let me see if this works. The reason I say that, you'll find out very soon. It doesn't work. See? Okay, good. That's a good example. So this is just shy of the bench dog. So what I normally do in that case is I use a small spacer. Let's see if that works. So you can have a few spacers lying around. Yeah, that works beautifully. Okay, so here's an example of using the sliding tail vise with a bench dog. What I've done with this the sliding component is I have a strip of Mylar. I think it's called Mylar tape underneath, and it glides a lot better too underneath these sliding tailways. And I do sell plans for this at my at the woodskills.com website. So if you want to invest in rather invest in a different type of tail vise where you have to actually modify your workbench, this plugs in. You can actually remove it. These bolts pop out. There's an inset, they're 1/4 inch 20 bolts, and so you leave the inset in, and if you need to use a workbench for anything else. The part of the design was over time I've made them narrower and narrower. I have this version. This is one of the early versions that works really well, but it's wider, and it actually worked with 2 dog holes and 2 of these sliding components with some Mylar strips. That works really well too, and it even has a grooved edge to allow me to work with combination planes, plow planes, and all that, create drawer grooves. One of the reasons I've made them narrower and less obtrusive is to be able to still have functionality of the rest of the job, so I can actually still clamp large wide boards in here, panels, and this I never really have to remove these. So whereas I used to have to remove this to be able to work with. Well, that so like I said, I have them set up on both my workbenches, and I've never removed them, I don't think, for anything. I've been able to use the end vise for my work, and I never really have to go this far out on the end vise to this end of the job, because the actual screw, 2 screws are so really the only functional part of the twin screw end vise is the part between the 2 lead screws, or the clamping screws. So anyway, back to this. So what I'll do is I'll see how far I get with this. I can already feel the ugly grain at the other end. It's a good test for this hand plane too. It's a 50-degree frog, so it's really just supposed to have it tear out a little more. Yeah, there's no getting around this tear out at this end. This is considered super squirrely wood here at this end, so it's hard to, and the grain orientation is awful, so it's so I managed to smooth this part but not this part. So this is a piece of wood that I would never use in a piece of furniture anyway. So what I'll do is I'll flip it around, see how far I get in this direction. What will probably happen is I'll be able to hand plane this end a little better, but and this area suffers. So I'll clear that off. Well, this area might not suffer because it's a high angle frog. Notice the technique I use. I use my whole body I don't just stand in one spot and force the hand plane down, because then you're using your shoulders and arms. I try to use the body, so you notice I'm moving my body as be a little better in this direction. Definitely cleaning up some of the tear at this end. So it's a little high on this side now. That's because I'm just experimenting with getting the tear out. Fix that. So I'll just, this is what I do. I just take maybe 2 or 3 shavings from this side, and then continue with these full wood shavings. So you can see how nice the system is, just quick to release and tension the board. Yeah, well, I looked in there. Wait a minute. Looked in at this end, but not this end. You can usually eyeball if it's square or not without having to use a That's a little high, I think. So it starts to, this is a good idea. See, it's a little high on this side. So that's exactly, so I marked off with a pencil where it's high and where it starts. So I work on the different ways of doing this, and some woodworkers will do it differently and claim that this is not the correct way to do it. But so let's say I've without even moving the board. Oh, that's perfect now. Okay, so it's square along its surface, that length. So what I do now is hand plane, try to get the full width shavings. Maybe I should just work and talk less. Like I said, sometimes if it's a gnarly wood like this, I tend to skew the plane, the hand plane. It just works better to introduce a different angle into the wood. Oh my God, having a problem with that end. So this is a real live troubleshooting session too here, because I'm having problems with this end, no matter what I do. So I start working that edge. You can do it differently. You can actually tilt the blade so it protrudes more on one side, but I like to do it this way. So I don't have to constantly readjust the okay, straight ahead. think one last pass on that end. This is how quick this system works. Can't say enough good things about it because I spent a lot of time developing this system and with different variations of it, and this is a final version, and you know, if it didn't work I wouldn't have it on my workbench. I like it so much I have it on both. I have a very similar workbench at the other end of the workshop. So I used to teach in-person classes in this workshop, so I was mostly set up to teach in person with maybe maximum 2 students. Okay, that's perfect now. So what I've managed to do, so it's really set up for that, but I don't really do that much anymore, mostly online teaching. So what I've managed to do is fix this edge. It was quite ugly, and remove the tear out from this end. So if you look at the grain on this, it's horrible. It's like something you just toss away or put in a burn pile. Now the other side is a little better, the other edge. So that's squared. So let's say if we want to square this next edge. Might be a little bow on this side. I think there's a little bow on this side because it just, there's a dip in the middle. See the shavings are slowly getting longer. When I started, the shavings were only being removed from both ends, so there was a little dip here, and so it's a lot like running a board on along the power jointer. You can see that when you first run a board over the jointer, you'll start addressing these dips, and then eventually it joints the whole surface. What I'm doing here is I'm essentially just hand planing the ends until the here's a good example of why you need to remove the shavings. So if I'm going along and this mouth is clogged with older shavings, I can't really see what I'm doing. The shavings are starting to be removed along the full length. Yeah, it's not. It's not quite square, so. Some wax on this. I use a lot of domestic woods now. In my work, I used to use exotics, and first of all, they take a heavy toll on your irons or blades or chisels. It's just the density of the wood and the interlocking grain. So I tend to use cherry, maple, mahogany sometimes. Yeah, that worked really well. See, without even doing anything, the shaving, the 2 shavings I just removed actually were removed from the high spots along the edge. That was amazing. see the shavings are between full width now. That's probably the best shaving so far. Yeah. Just a little more at this one. So, beauty of hand tools, again, hand planes, we're producing fluffy shavings and not dust. No dust in the air, no airborne dust. It's fantastic in that regard. So if you're working in an environment where you can't create dust or make noise, then hand tools is your best option. Perfect. So I managed to square these two edges of this board, and trust me, it's a board that I would not use in any furniture. It's just the grain pattern is just ugly. It's this is a good example of horrible looking cathedral grain, and it's flat sawn or plain sawn wood. So you can tell by this part, it's a very flat sawn. Super flat sawn, so it's not rift sawn or not quarter sawn, nothing in the middle, it's just completely flat sawn wood. Plain sawn. So it's the kind of wood they use in a commercial environment. They just cut the wood any which way and make it work. So either put an opaque stain on it, fill it in with filler, or do something, but this is not what we're striving for when we work with hand tools and create fine furniture. So I think I'll stop here. It's been about an hour and 20 minutes, or an hour and 15 minutes. I wanted to go on, so I've shown 3 things today, and I'm going to go on in the next session. I'm not sure when I'll do that, but I need to get more attendees to these sessions somehow, so I don't just talk. Somebody's life and pain. Nice idea for holding work pieces. Yes, very much so. So I spent a lot of time developing these systems, because I'm I've become very much hand tool advocate over the years, and so I wanted to make this work. And actually, these are both of these workbenches are commercial workbenches. They're both the same in orientation and configuration, but my next to last workbench was huge, and I built it myself with the bench stock holes, and I didn't really have a good face vise or an end vise. I didn't have an end vise at all, so I developed a lot of this system to be able to work make furniture at a workbench without an end vise. And that was one of the early criteria, but since then, a lot of people do have end vises, but because they have an end vise, it doesn't work well as a tail vise. Like this does not work well as a tail vise because you would have to brace the wood so far out on the jaw that it could actually tilt the jaw, or it just doesn't work well. And that's why I came up with this system. What this system does is it moves again with this piece, it moves the work into the workbench itself. So we're using the end vise or twin screw vise as a jaw, but not so much the jaw, but it moves the sliding tail vise component back and forth. So that's that. And it's very simple. You notice there is a little bit of play in it, but that's purposely there. The play is it just locks. Once it's locked in, the play is gone. So if I use that shim again on this piece, the play's gone, essentially gone. So that's enough pressure to keep the board from moving. I mean, even with the strongest tail vise out there, you'll always have some flex, but there is hardly any flex here. So it's a very simple system, it works. And that's, you find most of what I develop as far as bench accessories and all this is I try to make it as simple as possible. I don't like complexity, because I find when it's complex, you're less likely to use it. Same with machines. When I used to use machines in my work more, I found the more complex machines are so complex that if you don't use them often enough, you almost forget how to set them up. So you have to keep going, having to go back to the manual or spending a whole lot of time trying to set up a machine when you could do it so much faster with, like I demonstrated this morning, just using hand tools. So I think I'm going to end it here. Hope you guys have enjoyed this, whoever's attending, and it's good. I think this is going to be recorded and it'll be on Twitch for a while, and it's definitely going to be on YouTube. So I think I'll end it here. And thanks for attending, for the people that attended today, and for the people that are viewing this later. You know, enjoy it. There'll be more follow-on sessions, and I'll keep talking about with how I do work holding and how I work at the workbench in my furniture making. So I just enjoy sharing these processes. Again, my website is woodskills.com, and I have a selection of my books there, a whole series of online courses, and these are 4 of my books, and 2 other books that I've written in the last year are digital books, so they're out there too. But these are you can have these both in digital and print versions. If you want some inspiration on, earlier I mentioned James Krenov very much inspired my whole furniture making career. Essentially, the style, the philosophy. This is the book. I've had this book for 35 years. This was a textbook in my first cabinet making class. Yeah, I keep forgetting. I got this flipped wrong. The first textbook in my first cabinet making class, and it's one of James Krenov's first books. And it's the imagery is black and white and all that, but the text is incredible. Reading what you'll see a lot of what he said and what I said today. Also, I'm not taking anything away from James Krenov, but he's inspired me so much that I really follow his philosophy and his style of work. And I don't know how many times I've reread this book. I'm still rereading it today. I just can't get so much more every time I read it. Missed something earlier. So it's a Fine Art of Cabinet Making by James Krenov. Very, very good book. And he's got 4 books out. I've got all 4, but this is, I would start with this book because it discusses a lot of what I said here today, wood selection and grain orientation, that sort of thing. So I'll stop this today. Let me see here. I'll stop this. Okay, well, thanks for attending.